The vast emptiness of space stretched before the human observation station orbiting Earth's moon. For decades, humanity had sent signals into the darkness, hoping for a response. Today, that response had finally arrived. Commander Jack West stood at the viewport, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass as he watched the alien ship approach. It was unlike anything humans had built, sleek, almost organic in appearance, with a pearlescent hull that seemed to shift colors as it moved through space. "They're hailing us again, sir," reported Officer Tom Reed from his console. "Same message as before." Jack nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a being that looked almost like a tall, thin human, but with striking differences. Its skin had a bluish tint, large eyes dominated its face, and what appeared to be gill-like structures pulsed gently at its neck. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Lead Evaluator Tren of the Galactic Concord. We come in peace to assess your civilization's readiness to join our interstellar community." Jack squared his shoulders. After 20 years in Earth's unified space force, he thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "This is Commander Jack West of the United Earth Defense Force. We welcome you to our system." Within hours, the news spread across Earth. Humanity was not alone. And not only that, there was an entire community of civilizations out there, governed by something called the Galactic Concord. 3 days later, Jack found himself inside the massive United Earth Council chamber in New Geneva, watching as 7 different alien species filed into the room. Each was more strange than the last, some barely humanoid, others looking more like intelligent plants or crystalline structures that floated above the ground. President Mary Patel stepped forward. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome representatives of the Galactic Concord to Earth. Lead Evaluator Tren, the blue-skinned alien who had first contacted them, bowed slightly. We are pleased to finally meet the inhabitants of Sol 3, known to you as Earth. We have observed your world from afar for some time." "How long is some time?" Jack asked from his position beside the president. Tren turned those large eyes toward him. "Approximately 200 of your Earth years. Your development has been surprising. Most species take far longer to achieve spaceflight after discovering electricity." President Patel smiled. "Humans have always been quick learners." "Indeed," said Tren, though something in the alien's tone suggested this wasn't necessarily a compliment. "That is partly why we are here. Your species has advanced rapidly, and now stands at a crossroads." One of the other aliens, a being that resembled a large mantis with iridescent wings, stepped forward. "What our colleague means is that your kind has developed spaceflight capabilities before fully maturing as a civilization. This is unusual and potentially concerning." Jack felt his jaw tighten. "Concerning in what way?" Tren's gill-like structures fluttered. "You evolved on what we classify as a death world, a planet with extraordinary environmental pressures. Such worlds typically produce species with aggressive survival instincts." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "The Concord has protocols for such situations," Tren continued. "That is why I have brought representatives from our 7 founding civilizations. We will evaluate whether humanity is ready to join our community, or if your species requires a period of guided development." Jack caught the president's eye. The message was clear. This wasn't just a friendly visit. It was a test, and humanity was being judged by standards they didn't even understand yet. The United Earth Council chamber buzzed with tension the next morning. Representatives from every nation sat in tiered rows, watching as the alien delegation took their places at the center of the room. Jack stood at attention beside the human security detail, studying each visitor carefully. Lead Evaluator Tren stepped forward, activating a holographic display that materialized in the air. The image showed Earth floating in space, surrounded by data points that Jack couldn't understand. "We have completed our preliminary analysis of your world," Tren announced, "and we find several matters of concern." President Patel leaned forward. "What concerns exactly, Evaluator?" Tren gestured, and a hologram changed to show comparative charts. Your species ranks remarkably low among all known sentient races. Your lifespans are brief, barely a century at most. Your senses are limited. You cannot see beyond a narrow spectrum of light, cannot hear the higher frequencies that carry much communication in space. Your bodies are fragile, requiring constant maintenance. The mantis-like alien clicked forward. I am Observer Rix of the Vatic Hive. We find your technological development concerning as well. You advance weapons alongside medicine, destruction alongside creation. This pattern is troubling. Jack felt his face grow hot, but he maintained his composure. Many council members weren't hiding their anger as well. A crystalline being floated forward, light refracting through its transparent body. I am Harmonizer Pell. We note that your species still engages in conflict among yourselves. This suggests fundamental instability. President Patel raised her hand. With respect, we've maintained global peace for 30 years. No species evolves without conflict. True, said Tren. But most species outgrow it before reaching the stars. You have not. Jack couldn't stay silent any longer. Evaluator Tren, you call Earth a death world. What exactly does that mean? Tren turned those large eyes toward him. Your planet has extreme gravity by galactic standards. Your atmosphere contains corrosive oxygen. You experience wild temperature variations, constant natural disasters, and lethal radiation from your sun. Most sentient life evolves in much more stable environments. So we're tough, Jack said simply. You are primitive, corrected another alien. This one covered in fine fur with 6 arms folded across its chest. Your physical resilience does not compensate for your technological and cultural immaturity. The council erupted in protests until President Patel called for order. What exactly do you want from us? She demanded. Tren gestured, and the hologram changed again, showing the solar system with a barrier around it. The Galactic Concord has protocols for situations like yours. Species that evolve on death worlds are typically quarantined until they demonstrate sufficient advancement and stability. Quarantined? Jack echoed in disbelief. Yes, for your safety and ours. Unless... Tren paused. Unless you can prove your value to the greater galactic community. President Patel stood tall. And how would we do that? You have 1 standard month, approximately 40 of your Earth days, to demonstrate that humanity offers something unique, something valuable that the Concord cannot find elsewhere. The room fell silent. And if we fail, asked the president, then a quarantine field will be established around your solar system. You will be isolated until you either destroy yourselves, as many Deathworld species do, or evolve beyond your current limitations. Jack stepped forward. That's not fair. You're judging us by standards we didn't even know existed until yesterday. Tren's gill structures fluttered. Fairness is irrelevant, Commander West. This is simply how things are done. 1 month. Show us humanity's worth, or face isolation for generations to come. As the alien delegation departed, Jack caught the president's eye. They both understood. Humanity's future among the stars now hung in the balance. 3 days after the challenge was issued, Jack found himself in the president's private office along with Earth's top scientists and military officials. The mood was grim as they discussed possible ways to prove humanity's worth to the Galactic Concord. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, said Dr. Anna Rivera, head of the Global Science Initiative. We can't impress them with our achievements in physics or medicine. Our art, our music, suggested Cultural Minister Thomas. General Pierce shook his head. They've barely shown interest in our culture. They see us as dangerous children. Jack had been quiet, studying the star charts projected on the wall. Now he stepped forward. What if we show them exactly what makes us dangerous? Everyone turned to look at him. Not as a threat, Jack clarified quickly, but as a demonstration of our value. Explain, said President Patel. Jack pointed to a star system near the edge of explored space, planet XJ42. We discovered it 2 years ago, but haven't established a permanent base there because of extreme conditions. The survey team called it hell in space. Dr. Rivera nodded. Surface temperature variations of over 100 degrees in a single day. Gravity 1.3 times Earth's. Atmospheric toxins. Storm systems that can strip the paint off a shuttle. Exactly, said Jack. It's a death world by their standards, maybe worse than Earth, but our preliminary scans showed deposits of an element we haven't seen before. Element 731, confirmed Dr. Rivera. We still don't know all its properties. Jack turned to the president. I propose we take the alien evaluation team to XJ42. Show them how humans can not only survive but work effectively in conditions they find impossible. And if we can identify valuable properties of this new element, we prove our worth as explorers and problem solvers. Silence fell over the room as everyone considered the idea. General Pierce broke it first. It's risky. If something goes wrong, it's still better than being quarantined for generations, Jack replied. President Patel studied the star chart. Commander West, if I approve this, would you lead the expedition? Yes, Madam President. 2 days later, Jack stood before lead evaluator Tren in the aliens' temporary quarters. He explained the proposal, watching carefully for reactions. You wish to take us to a world even more hostile than your Earth. Tren's gill structures pulsated rapidly. To what end? To show you firsthand what humans can do in environments other species might find challenging. Plus, we believe there are resources there that could benefit the entire Concord. Tren conferred briefly with the other aliens in a language Jack's translator couldn't decipher. Finally, the evaluator turned back to him. Your proposal is unexpected, but it aligns with our evaluation protocols. We will accompany you to this world. 1 week later, the expedition was ready. Jack had handpicked his crew. Dr. Rivera for scientific expertise, Lieutenant Ben Davis for security, and Engineer Maria Lopes for technical support. The alien delegation had selected 4 representatives to join. Tren, the mantis-like Rix, the crystalline Pell, and a 4th alien named Corv who resembled a heavily muscled amphibian. As they boarded the Earth vessel Pathfinder, Jack couldn't help but notice how uncomfortable the aliens seemed in Earth's environment. Trent moved sluggishly in the gravity. Rix kept his wings tightly folded against the atmospheric pressure, and Pell had to be contained in a special environment suit. You struggle even here, observed Jack. Yet this is where we evolved. A curious point, admitted Tren. Perhaps that explains your species' peculiar resilience. The ship's engines rumbled to life. Jack took his command seat as the Pathfinder lifted off, carrying humanity's hopes with it toward a planet even humans called hell. 3 days after the challenge was issued, Jack found himself in the president's private office along with Earth's top scientists and military officials. The mood was grim as they discussed possible ways to prove humanity's worth to the galactic Concord. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, said Dr. Anna Rivera, head of the Global Science Initiative. We can't impress them with our achievements in physics or medicine. Our art, our music, suggested Cultural Minister Thomas. General Pierce shook his head. They've barely shown interest in our culture. They see us as dangerous children. Jack had been quiet, studying the star charts projected on the wall. Now he stepped forward. What if we show them exactly what makes us dangerous? Everyone turned to look at him. Not as a threat, Jack clarified quickly, but as a demonstration of our value. Explain, said President Patel. Jack pointed to a star system near the edge of explored space, planet XJ42. We discovered it 2 years ago, but haven't established a permanent base there because of extreme conditions. The survey team called it hell in space. Dr. Rivera nodded. Surface temperature variations of over 100 degrees in a single day. Gravity 1.3 times Earth's. Atmospheric toxins. Storm systems that can strip the paint off a shuttle. Exactly, said Jack. It's a death world by their standards, maybe worse than Earth, but our preliminary scans showed deposits of an element we haven't seen before. Element 731, confirmed Dr. Rivera. We still don't know all its properties. Jack turned to the president. I propose we take the alien evaluation team to XJ42. Show them how humans can not only survive but work effectively in conditions they find impossible. And if we can identify valuable properties of this new element, we prove our worth as explorers and problem solvers. Silence fell over the room as everyone considered the idea. General Pierce broke it first. It's risky. If something goes wrong, it's still better than being quarantined for generations, Jack replied. President Patel studied the star chart. Commander West, if I approve this, would you lead the expedition? Yes, Madam President. 2 days later, Jack stood before lead evaluator Tren in the aliens' temporary quarters. He explained the proposal, watching carefully for reactions. You wish to take us to a world even more hostile than your Earth. Tren's gill structures pulsated rapidly. To what end? To show you firsthand what humans can do in environments other species might find challenging. Plus, we believe there are resources there that could benefit the entire Concord. Tren conferred briefly with the other aliens in a language Jack's translator couldn't decipher. Finally, the evaluator turned back to him. Your proposal is unexpected, but it aligns with our evaluation protocols. We will accompany you to this world. 1 week later, the expedition was ready. Jack had handpicked his crew. Dr. Rivera for scientific expertise, Lieutenant Ben Davis for security, and Engineer Maria Lopes for technical support. The alien delegation had selected 4 representatives to join. Tren, the mantis-like Rix, the crystalline Pell, and a 4th alien named Corv who resembled a heavily muscled amphibian. As they boarded the Earth vessel Pathfinder, Jack couldn't help but notice how uncomfortable the aliens seemed in Earth's environment. Trent moved sluggishly in the gravity. Rix kept his wings tightly folded against the atmospheric pressure, and Pell had to be contained in a special environment suit. You struggle even here, observed Jack. Yet this is where we evolved. A curious point, admitted Tren. Perhaps that explains your species' peculiar resilience. The ship's engines rumbled to life. Jack took his command seat as the Pathfinder lifted off, carrying humanity's hopes with it toward a planet even humans called Hell. By sunset of the first day on XJ42, Jack had established a functional base camp around the damaged Pathfinder. The ship lay tilted at a 30-degree angle, partially buried in the rusty soil, while his human crew worked efficiently. Despite the punishing heat and gravity, the alien observers remained inside the ship's emergency shelter, their conditions deteriorating. Their environmental support systems are failing, Dr. Rivera reported as she and Jack stood outside the ship. The planet's conditions are overwhelming their technology. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. How much time do they have? Less than 2 days before serious health issues begin. Pell is suffering the most. The crystalline structure is developing more fractures in this gravity. Jack nodded grimly. Then we need to work faster. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted from scorching heat to bitter cold. The human crew had anticipated this, setting up thermal barriers around their work areas. They continued repairs by floodlight, their breath visible in the rapidly cooling air. Inside the shelter, Jack found Tren watching the humans through a viewport, those large alien eyes unblinking. Your people continue working despite the temperature change? Tren asked weakly. We're used to adapting, Jack replied. Earth has similar extremes in some regions. A sudden howl cut through the night, echoing across the barren landscape. Everyone froze. What was that? Ben asked, hand moving to his weapon. Jack shook his head. Unknown. The initial survey didn't report any large life forms. The survey was incomplete, Tren said, struggling to stand. Your teams only spent hours here. Some threats might remain hidden for days before revealing themselves. As if summoned by these words, dark shapes appeared at the edge of the floodlights. 6-legged creatures the size of large dogs, with tough exoskeletons and multiple eyes reflecting the artificial light. Everyone inside. Jack ordered, but knew immediately they wouldn't all make it. 3 of the creatures charged toward Maria as she worked on an external panel. Without hesitation, Jack ran toward her, drawing his sidearm. The increased gravity made each step laborious, but he pushed through it. He fired 2 precise shots, dropping the nearest creatures. The third leaped at him, razor-sharp appendages extended. Jack dodged despite the crushing gravity, grabbed a metal pipe from the repair equipment, and swung it with all his strength. The creature flew backward, stunned. "Get the door sealed," he shouted as he helped Maria inside. Once everyone was secure, Jack slumped against the wall, breathing heavily from the exertion. "That was remarkable," Gorv said, his amphibious features registering what might have been respect. "In this gravity, such movement should be impossible." "Not impossible," Jack gasped, "just difficult." Through the night, the creatures circled the ship, occasionally testing the barriers. The humans took shifts standing guard while continuing essential repairs. By morning, they had restored partial power to the communications array. Jack found Tren watching him again as he reviewed their progress. "You should have told us this planet had dangerous predators," the evaluator said. "We didn't know," Jack admitted, "but that's the point of being human. We expect the unexpected and adapt to it." "Your species thrives on risk," Tren observed. "It is not how we operate." As another day began, with temperatures climbing rapidly again, Jack saw the aliens watching the human crew with new eyes. Dr. Rivera worked tirelessly to improve the aliens' environmental support. Ben reinforced their defenses against the creatures. Maria cleverly modified their equipment to function in the harsh conditions. "Commander," Tren called weakly, "I believe we may have underestimated your species." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "That's a start. But we're not done proving ourselves yet." Outside, through the viewport, strange dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Another challenge approaching that none of them could predict. 3 days after the crash, Jack led a small expedition away from the ship. The communication array was functioning enough to send a distress signal, but repairs to the engines would require materials they didn't have. Their only option was to explore. The initial survey mentioned unusual mineral deposits 5 kilometers east. Jack explained as he checked his equipment. "We need to investigate." "I will accompany you," Tren announced, struggling to stand in the heavy gravity. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? The conditions out there are brutal." "Precisely why I must observe," Tren replied. "This evaluation is not complete." The small group, Jack, Ben, and a weakened but determined Tren, set out across the barren landscape. The red sun beat down mercilessly as they trudged over rocky terrain. Every few minutes, Tren would stop, gasping for breath, but insisted on continuing each time. "Your determination is noteworthy," Jack commented during one such pause. Tren's gill structures fluttered. "In my 700 years, I have never experienced such physical strain." 700, Ben whistled. "And I thought my grandfather was old at 90. Your brief lifespans," Tren observed, "perhaps they drive your constant urgency." They continued in silence until reaching a deep ravine. At the bottom lay glittering black stones, the unusual minerals from the survey. "We need to collect samples," Jack said, studying the steep descent. "Ben, secure the climbing lines." As they prepared to descend, the ground suddenly trembled beneath them. What had appeared to be solid rock at the ravine's edge crumbled away, sending all 3 tumbling down the slope. Jack managed to grab Tren with one hand and a protruding rock with the other, while Ben slid to a stop several meters below. "Everyone okay?" Jack called out, muscles straining as he held the alien's weight. "Affirmative," Ben replied. "But I don't think we're climbing back up that way." Once they reached the bottom safely, Jack noticed something unusual about the ravine walls: perfectly straight lines and geometric patterns half buried in the rock. "This isn't natural," he said, brushing away dust to reveal what appeared to be a metal panel with strange symbols. Tren moved closer, eyes widening. Those markings, their precursor script. Precursor, Jack asked. An ancient species believed to have seeded advanced life throughout the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. Tren explained, suddenly energized despite the harsh conditions. Finding intact precursor technology is extremely rare. Ben discovered what looked like a doorway. With considerable effort, they forced it open, revealing a tunnel leading underground. Inside, the temperature was cooler, the air strangely breathable. They followed the passage until it opened into a vast chamber filled with technology unlike anything the humans had seen. At the center stood a holographic display, still functioning after what must have been thousands of years. Tren approached it reverently. This is unprecedented. A precursor archive, intact. The alien touched the controls, but nothing happened. Jack stepped forward, examining the interface. "May I?" he asked. Tren stepped aside. Jack studied the patterns, noticing what appeared to be a simple logic puzzle in the symbols. Drawing on his military code training, he pressed several controls in sequence. The hologram flickered, then expanded to fill the room with star maps and data streams. "How did you activate it?" Tren asked, astonished. "Pattern recognition," Jack replied. "Something humans are good at." As they explored the information, Tren became increasingly agitated. This cannot be. According to this data, the precursors, they evolved on a world even more hostile than Earth. Jack studied the images of the precursors, beings with a striking resemblance to humans in their basic structure. They were Deathworlders, he said, understanding dawning. Like us. Tren's voice was barely audible. The data suggests they engineered all other sentient species in the galaxy, created them from their own genetic material, adapted for specific environments. Jack looked at the alien. "Which means?" "Which means," Tren replied, gill structures pulsing rapidly, that humans may be the closest living relatives to the precursors themselves. Not primitive at all, but perhaps our ancestors. The implications hung in the air between them as the ancient hologram continued its silent display, rewriting everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. 2 weeks after their expedition began, the rescue ship arrived in orbit around XJ-42. The Pathfinder's distress signal had been received by Earth Command, who sent their fastest vessel to retrieve the stranded crew and alien observers. Jack stood on the bridge of the rescue ship, watching as the red planet receded from view. The mission had cost them greatly. Engineer Maria had suffered a broken leg during the final evacuation, and all of them bore the marks of their ordeal in the form of scars, weight loss, and exhaustion. Yet they had survived. More importantly, they had returned with something beyond value. Data from the precursor archive, carefully extracted and stored before they left the underground chamber. "Commander West," called a voice from behind him. Jack turned to see Tren approaching. The alien moved with more confidence now, having spent nearly 2 weeks adapting to harsh conditions. While still weakened, there was a new respect in those large eyes. "We will arrive at the Galactic Concord Station in 3 days," Tren said. "The full council awaits our report." Jack nodded. "Have you decided what you'll tell them?" "I have," Tren replied, moving to stand beside Jack at the viewport. "Though I suspect it is not what they expect to hear." 3 days later, Jack and his crew stood in the magnificent central chamber of the Concord Station. The room was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all gathered to hear the evaluation team's findings about humanity. Lead evaluator Tren stepped to the central platform, gill structures pulsing with what Jack had come to recognize as excitement. "Esteemed members of the Concord," Tren began, voice echoing through the vast space, "I stand before you today to deliver our assessment of the species known as humans." A hush fell over the assembly. "When we began this evaluation, we saw only a primitive species from a hostile world. We measured them by our standards and found them wanting. Their lives are short. Their bodies are fragile. Their technology is young. Many of the aliens nodded in agreement. Jack felt his jaw tighten. We were wrong, Trend continued, causing a ripple of surprise through the chamber. Completely and fundamentally wrong. The holographic display activated, showing footage from their time on XJ-42. Humans working tirelessly in crushing gravity, adapting to extreme temperature shifts, fighting off predators, solving problems with limited resources. What we witnessed was not primitive survival, but extraordinary adaptation. Not simple endurance, but complex problem-solving under conditions that would kill most of us within hours. Then Trend revealed their greatest discovery, the Precursor Archive, and its shocking revelation. The data we recovered suggests that humans may be the closest living relatives to the precursors themselves, the same beings who engineered many of our species for specific environmental niches. The chamber erupted in chaos. Jack watched as thousands of aliens debated, argued, and processed this information. When order was finally restored, Trend continued. Humanity's place in our galactic community is not as lesser members to be tolerated, but as inheritors of the precursor legacy. Their adaptability, their resilience, their unique cognitive approach. These are not weaknesses, but extraordinary strengths our specialized species have lost. Trend turned to face Jack directly. They evolved on a world that would kill most of us, and that Crucible forged qualities we desperately need. The precursor data suggests our galaxy faces cyclical challenges that no specialized species can survive alone. The alien bowed deeply to Jack and his crew. I formally recommend humanity's immediate acceptance into the Concord with special status as inheritors, not just members, but potential leaders who might help us face what is coming. As the council voted overwhelmingly to accept humanity, Jack stood quietly at the back of the chamber. He thought about Earth, about the long journey his species had traveled, from caves to stars, always adapting, always surviving. Commander, Trend said, approaching after the vote, what will humanity do now, as part of our community? Jack smiled. What we've always done. Adapt, explore, and help others do the same. In that moment, as thousands of alien species contemplated a future alongside humans, the Deathworlders had finally found their answer and their place among the stars.